Hi guys, we're going to add and subtract some complex numbers. So let's start with multiplying. This complex number is 6 minus 3i. And so we can't just distribute the squared because this is one whole number. So I'm taking 6 minus 3i and I'm multiplying it by itself. So now we have this big number that we need to multiply. When we multiply something with two terms times two terms, we take the first term and we want to multiply that to both numbers in the second number. So it looks like this with the distributive property. We're going to take the 6 times both of those. And then I want to take the second term and do the same thing. I want to distribute that second number to both of those. So it looks like this. So I'm taking the first number and I'm going to distribute it to both. And I'm going to take the second number and distribute it to both. So I have 6 times 6. 6 times negative 3i. Negative 3i times 6. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. And then I times I is I squared. So when we start combining like terms here, I have my middle values. So 36 minus negative 18 minus 18 is 36 as well, I, plus 9i squared. There's a big idea in this module, in module 2. You need to remember that I squared equals negative 1. This is a big deal. So I'm going to take this I squared, and this is really 9 times negative 1. So 9 times negative 1 is negative 9, and then I'll bring down everything else that's up here. Oops, that's a 36. And now I'm going to combine like terms. I have 36 minus 9, which is 27, and then the minus 36i. So here we have a complex number, we can't simplify it anymore, and we can see our answer right here. So that's how we multiply a complex number using the distributive property. Sometimes we want to multiply just the i's. So this becomes I to the 16th. And we want to simplify this down. So we went over this in 2.1, but I'll go over it again. If I take I squared, I get negative 1. I to the third is negative I, and I to the fourth is positive 1. And we get those by breaking those apart. So I'm going to rewrite I to the 16th using exponent properties, x to the 4th, all to the 4th. So if I multiply these, I get the 16th. And I used 4 because I know this one. I to the 4th is positive 1. So I get positive 1 to the 4th power, which is just 1. Okay. Last one, we're going to divide. So when we divide complex numbers, we use what we call the conjugate, which uses the opposite sign. So we did this in our radicals as well. we're going to multiply by 11 plus I. You take the conjugate of the denominator. And whatever you multiply on the denominator, you have to multiply on the numerator as well. So what this is, it's just a fancy way of multiplying by 1. We're not changing the value, we're just trying to simplify it a little bit. So I have 6 plus 5i times 11 plus I divided by 11 minus I is 11 plus I. And we're going to use that same property that we used on our first problem. We're going to use the distributive property. So I'm going to distribute this 11 to both terms in the second complex number. And I'm going to distribute the negative I to both terms in the second number. And we're going to do the same thing on the numerator, so I'm going to write it. So I'm going to take the 6 and distribute that to both numbers. And then I'm going to take the 5i and distribute that to both numbers. And then we just have a lot of multiplication. So 6 times 11, 6 times I, 5i times 11, 5i times I is 5i squared, divided by 11 times 11, 11 times I, negative 11. Negative I times positive I is negative I squared. And we'll start getting some like terms out of the way. So 11 minus 11, that's 0. 6i plus 55i is 61i. And then we're going to use our property of I squared. So where I have an I squared here, I'm going to replace that with negative 1. And I'll rewrite it because that's a little hard to see. So 5 times negative 1 . And then 121 minus negative 1. So this becomes minus 5. And these become positive. So we get 121 plus 1 is 122. And then 66 minus 5 is 61. Plus 61. Hi. And that's as simplified as we can go. So we're going to leave it like that, and we can see our answer is right here. So I just want to throw in, if you're using a TI calculator, that all of these can go in the TI calculator. There is an I button on there next to the decimal, and using the second button. So this is the by hand way, but there's also a calculator way if you want to go grab